Hello, I'm Michelle Tapper and welcome to my Churchill Fellowship Report. I was awarded a fellowship in 2019, but because of the pandemic, I didn't get to travel until 2022. In April and May of 2022, I travelled to the UK, USA, Paris and Geneva to visit some of the world's leading science organisations. And I'd like to acknowledge the Churchill Trust because without them, I wouldn't have had this amazing opportunity. And of course, it couldn't be possible without all the many organisations that graciously gave up their time and generously shared information with me. And of course, a big thanks to the Australian Academy of Science who have supported me while I applied and also while I travelled. My project was to study science video production at some of the world's leading science organisations and to try to develop a financially sustainable model so that we can grow and develop science video production here in Australia and then publish those videos on social media so they're available to the general public. And I think the pandemic has really shown us that there's never been a greater need for science communication, and video is one of the most powerful tools to get that message across. So if you're interested in science communication, video production, financing, social media, media training of scientists, and different video styles and future trends, then this report might be of interest to you. During my 2 months away and the many meetings I attended, I covered a lot of different subjects. So here's a quick look at some of the things that I'll be covering in this chat. I learned a lot about science video production during my 2-month trip, and people were incredibly generous with their time and also in sharing information. And I'm someone that comes from a mainstream media background. I've got more than 2 decades of experience, mostly in television. So science video production is a very specific niche. And of course, publishing on social media is a relatively new field and it's constantly evolving. Here's a quick snapshot of some of the findings from my trip. Basically, content is key if you want to build a bigger audience. Videos should probably not be seen as a revenue stream. Funding for video production varies. I saw lots of different models. Social media platforms are constantly evolving and they will continue to evolve. Remote studios are on the rise, and that's been a direct result of the pandemic when people couldn't go out and film and lockdowns happened. And many of the large science organisations that I visited have incredible studios, broadcast quality, and they're producing some really amazing high quality videos and productions. And editorial decisions are driven by a journalistic approach. So I thought that was really interesting at most of the organisations that I visited. Here's a look at my itinerary and some of the amazing organisations that I had the privilege of having meetings with and getting tours of their facilities. It truly was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. One of the highlights of my trip was doing a media training workshop in New York with the Alan Alda Center for Science Communication. I'd been wanting to do this workshop for a couple of years, so I was pretty excited about it. And it was also my first in-person workshop after 2.5 years of the pandemic, and we didn't wear masks. I had a little bit of anxiety, but we all got tested beforehand. So it was me and 24 or so lymphoma doctors. And it was a really interesting session. And I'm someone who has given media training before, done media training. I have a lot of experience in this area, but some of their techniques were really unique and they were innovative. And I knew that they were going to combine improv into the session. So I was really interested to see how that was going to pan out. And I think everybody learned a lot that day, and their trainers are definitely world-class communicators and scientists. So if you work in science communication, you'll know that there are many challenges, and there are many challenges in videos and trying to get your message across. One of those challenges is the attention span of your audience. Even now, while I'm doing this chat, can people trust in the message, in what you're saying, what you're trying to deliver, the points you're trying to get across, and how relevant is it, and how interesting is it to their lives? In the video space, we're now competing in a vast marketplace. There are so many videos out there. So what can you do to make your videos stand out in the crowd? There's also a proliferation of platforms. Where should you publish your content? And then how do you stand out in the noise? How can people see your videos and hear your message and trust that what you're saying is relevant and interesting to them because effective communication only works when the message lands. So what is effective communication, and how can you improve your communication skills and then use all of those tools to make a really entertaining and engaging science video? Well, firstly, the language should be conversational. So that's the voiceover as well as the scientist that's being featured in an interview. Are they easy to understand? Is the topic broken down enough so that regular people watching will understand what it is the scientist is trying to say and the research they're trying to explain? Also, is the topic relatable? Does it have anything to do with their regular lives? Will it be something that makes them want to continue watching? A science video is great if it creates empathy. Does it make people feel something, think a certain way, or actually want to do something after watching a video, like go get a vaccination or recycle rubbish or something like that? If you can create empathy, you'll have a more powerful impact from the video. What grabs attention? Is it the person being used? Is it the vision being highlighted? Vivid visual language really speaks volumes in a video. And of course, a strong finish is always really important. Do you want to pose a question, or do you want a call to action? Have somebody do something after watching your video. Content is really important if you want to build a bigger audience on social media, and that includes the quality of the topic being featured. How interesting is it to people? It includes the quality of the vision, and it also includes the quantity, how much you actually publishing on social media. Here are a few top tips from Anna Bruce Lockhart from the World Economic Forum, and I think they produce some of the best science videos available on social media. Anna says that every video at the World Economic Forum needs to be a good story. It needs to be fresh, surprising, or newsworthy. She says it's great if you can have a conversation with the viewer and also increase the visibility of the organization. And you can do that with an end frame on the video, which has a graphic about the organization that you work for, or you can feature people in the video that work for the organization or are associated with it. And videos should be solution focused. They should have a purpose or ask a question. You need to know why you're producing the video in the first place, and it helps if there's a good hook. What will get the viewer through the first 4 frames of that video? Because attention spans are very short. How do you hook the viewer in and keep them interested and engaged for a couple of minutes? Also really important is, how can you build a bigger audience organically so that you don't have to pay tens of thousands of dollars in Facebook posts? And I thought it was really interesting, but most of the organizations I went to were not paying for promotion of their videos. They actually had organic growth. And here are a few tips and ways in which they did that. Basically, speed is important if your video is going to be newsworthy. And particularly in the time of COVID, it was really hard to turn around videos, get that information out there, because you've just got such a short window to do it, to remain in the news cycle. So that means picking a topic, producing it, and publishing it all within the space of a news cycle. And the World Health Organization do that so well, as does the World Economic Forum. The amount of content, a lot of organizations have done some pretty interesting data and analytics, and they found that the more you publish, the more viewers you will attract. And I thought that was really interesting, because some people have thought that the more you publish, that then you're actually cannibalizing your content and then you'll get less followers. But many organizations found that the opposite was true. Get creative, that's an obvious one. Obviously, the more interesting and engaging your videos are, the more followers you will attract and the more traction you'll get with people sharing your videos. Quality, back to the interesting topic and the vision, vivid images always get people engaged. And trust. Are viewers able to trust in the information that you're presenting? Is it credible? Is it reliable? And really important with science videos, has it been fact-checked and reviewed? Now, that is very hard if you want to stay on top of the news cycle, but all of those are important qualities for science video production. Now, here's a look at what the experts are doing. and what works for them in their different organisations. And obviously they've tried a few different methods to get these results. Back to the World Economic Forum again, they not only publish science videos, but also science articles. And Anna Bruce Lockhart said that when they started cross-posting and sharing articles from other websites, their audience increased dramatically. And I think this is a great tip for smaller science organisations that maybe don't have well-funded and well-resourced video teams or people writing articles. If you can cross-post some of the content from other reputable organisations, you can deepen your engagement and also increase your audience figures. The World Health Organization, for them, speed is really important, and obviously that was very relevant during the pandemic and continues to be so. And they have access to some of the world's leading scientists, so they really lead the way in this space, and they need to get their information out immediately. So speed is the essence in keeping that information relevant. The JPL NASA Media Lab, they've been publishing on YouTube and Facebook for many years. And initially they were standing out in the crowd, but as more and more providers grew and the platforms expanded, they had to find a way to stand out in the crowd. Like, how could they be the signal in the noise? So they started getting really creative with their videos, and they produce some beautiful, beautiful space videos. And obviously they have the added advantage that they have incredible vision and footage of numerous space events. So they're pretty lucky with that. But other people can use that vision, and they do make it readily available for people to use and recut into other videos. And Gina Hutchinson, she's the Vice President of Editorial Content at the Smithsonian Channel. They did a data study, and they found that the more times they published on social media, that increased their following and audience. And they found that the sweet spot was between 5 and 7 times a day. Funding science videos can sometimes be a difficult proposition, and I have worked for an organisation that resorted to doing client videos and having partnerships with government organisations who would then pay for the science videos that we would publish on our social platforms, and then the funding from that would go into funding social media videos. But every organisation that I had meetings with didn't use videos as a revenue stream. They produce the science videos purely for the public good, to promote research and also the organisation that they were working for. And videos were mostly produced in-house. And in doing that, it cut down the cost of the videos, and it also helped promote the organisations through the science news and through research and through interesting stories that were being told. The goal for most organisations was to engage the unengaged, but also the already engaged. So it basically includes everybody. That's a huge target audience. And science videos are used by everybody that I met as a tool to inform the public, promote the organizations they worked for, promote scientists or exhibitions, and to create conversations and also foster curiosity. So what are the ways that people are funding science video production around the world? Well, it pretty much varies. One easy solution is to take money from the internal comms budget. There were plenty of organisations doing it that way. Others were making videos within the organisation, promotional style videos, and they would charge different departments, and then they would reallocate that fund to then fund their social media video production team. I thought that was a really interesting way to do it. Other organisations were purely using corporate philanthropic funding and donations, and some were really lucky to get partnerships with public broadcasters like the BBC and PBS, or they sought out those partnerships and even paid for them. Fundraising through membership or donations is also done pretty frequently in the US, and a lot of the organisations that I had meetings with used a combination of one or more of these different ways to fund their videos. Funding from multiple sources was a pretty common theme with the organisations that I visited. The Royal Society of London, they've got a really good model. They take some money from their internal comms budget, they have it set aside for video production. And they also developed a partnership with the BBC, which had many benefits because both of the organisations were funding the videos. And also the quality of those videos that were being produced was really high quality. They were beautiful videos to watch. And it also helped increase their audience following because the BBC was publishing them on their platforms. So they not only got high quality content, but also more traction with their videos. The California Science Center, they produced a very entertaining and engaging series of videos during the pandemic called Stuck at Home Science. And they're produced by people that got creative when the pandemic hit because they didn't have a lot to do because the center was closed down. And PBS, the public broadcasting system in America, also thought they were pretty great. And they adapted some of the episodes for after-school television programming. So that's a pretty good result there. The California Academy of Sciences, they raise money through private donations, scientific grants, and also a digital membership program. They also have the added benefit of being based in San Francisco near Silicon Valley, so they've had some pretty big donations, which has served them well. A lot of people up in that area very interested in science. The National Museum of Natural History, they have a partnership with the Smithsonian Channel, so they do get money from PBS, the public broadcasting system, and also the Smithsonian Channel. So it is a successful model, but as Jim Wood, the Assistant Director of Communications there, will admit that it is a bit of a tricky partnership that has to be negotiated. And I think that's what I found as a pretty common theme. There are lots of different funding sources, but it can be very difficult to manage. So if you do receive funding from external sources in the forms of donations or sponsorship, how do you retain integrity and independence in the science videos that you're producing? Well, here's what some of the experts have to say. The World Economic Forum, they do not do paid client videos for external clients. They do produce internal videos, but all of the clients internally are related to the organisation. The Royal Society of London says something similar. They do not do client videos because it would dilute their brand, jeopardise their independence, and also erode the trust in the science. Dave Patton, head of new media at the Science Museum of London, says that they also do not do paid client videos at this time. Their core goal is to engage the unengaged, and they focus on the internal priorities. And they think if they start doing external videos or receiving funds from external funders or donations, then they'll move away from their core values as an organisation. Now, obviously, receiving donations and funding can be a wonderful thing, but sometimes it does come with problems. And the National Academy of Sciences in Washington, D.C. found this out the hard way. They're just one of many organisations around the world that have been taking multi-million-dollar donations from the Sackler family. Now, they built their $10 billion fortune largely from the sales of OxyContin, which has been linked to the opioid epidemic. Now, the National Academy of Sciences are not alone. There are many art galleries in London, New York, right across America and throughout England that have also received money from the Sackler Foundation. And as William Kearney has found out, it's not so easy to give the money back. They've had the money frozen for several years and it's become a little bit of a PR nightmare, and they're trying to work their way through that. And it was something that took many years to come out. Obviously, when they started taking the money, the opioid epidemic wasn't even around. Now, the International Science Council in Paris during the pandemic, they created a pilot in conjunction with the Australian Academy of Science, and it was called Global Science TV. And the hope was always to get some funding. But as Alison Measton, the communications director of the ISC, has found, trying to find a white knight or someone who wants to put a lot of money into a new project like that is very, very difficult. So at the moment, Global Science TV is on hold, but she is holding out hope for some funding in the future. And when you do get funding, it shouldn't influence the content, according to the experts, and I also agree. And Judith Cox from the World Science Festival Foundation believes this really strongly, and they do receive a lot of donations and funding from sponsors. Judith says that the foundation likes to preserve the separation between sponsors, funders, and content, so there's absolutely no influence. And the World Economic Forum, they get a lot of internal requests, which we've talked about earlier, and they do produce some of those videos as well as the social media videos. But Liam, who is the head creative there, he says that they only actually commission about 50 to 60% of the internal requests, and that's because not all of them make great science videos. You can't just get a press release and hope to turn it into a couple of minutes of a science video, make it engaging and entertaining. So I think that's really interesting that they can actually say no to some of the internal departments within an organization. And I think that's really important, that funding should not influence content, because otherwise it just won't be as engaging and interesting as it should be to retain your audience and increase your followers. And the audience needs to be king. Now, as we know, social media platforms are constantly evolving. In fact, it's almost hard to remember what life was like before social media, which has only really been around since the early 2000s. And now, of course, social media is a big source of information for many people. It's also a vital marketing tool for many organizations. And it's estimated that around 58% of the world's population use social media. So that's around 4.6 billion people. And the average usage is around 2.5 hours a day, which I thought was a pretty staggering statistic. And recent research by the Pew Research Center found that nearly a third of Americans get their news from Facebook, which I also thought was pretty interesting. And although Facebook has been the king of social media for many years, this year the company has announced that it's actually lost followers for the first time in its 18-year history. And the new kid on the block, TikTok, is the fastest growing social media site. In fact, in 2020, they had 87% growth, and in 2021, another 18% growth. And obviously, TikTok is going to continue to grow. Now, here's a look at the world's most used social media platforms. No surprises that Facebook comes out on top, with YouTube a close second. And obviously, they're very popular platforms for publishers of videos in social media. And coming in fourth is Instagram. And have a look, TikTok is sixth on the list, and it's only been around for 2 years. So we're obviously going to see a lot more growth from TikTok over the coming years. Here's a look at what the experts are saying about the platforms that they're publishing on. Of all the organizations I've visited, the Smithsonian Channel were the only ones working in the TikTok space, and I'm sure that's going to change considering the growth rate at which that platform is evolving. Now, Gina Hutchinson, who is the VP of Editorial Content at the Smithsonian Channel, made the very brave and bold decision to start publishing on TikTok. She said that if you don't start publishing on certain platforms, other people will start to speak for you in that space, and you've got to reach the audience wherever they are. The World Health Organization, they publish on all the traditional platforms such as Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. They had a drastic increase in followers during the pandemic, as you would imagine, and a lot of social media outlets wanted to amplify their content, and they were pretty happy with that. The JPL Media Lab, the NASA Media Lab, they started publishing on YouTube in 2005, so they were one of the early adopters of putting science videos out there on social media platforms, and then it quickly became a very crowded space. So their mandate didn't change, but the way they produced videos changed. So they started to get really creative with their content to just keep the engagement and the entertaining qualities of their videos at an all-time high. I also found that remote studios are on the rise. Now, a lot of the larger science organizations already had small studios prior to the pandemic, but many of them quickly updated their settings, and it was pretty incredible to see some very impressive setups. Places like the World Economic Forum, their TV studios rival anything that I've seen at TV stations that I've worked in and visited around the world. Very impressive setups. Obviously, the pandemic created a huge demand for online webinars, as well as videos and scientific discussions. The World Science Festival Foundation, they really upped their game in the video department. They normally hold a live event in New York each year, as well as in Brisbane, Australia, and they moved everything online, which was a pretty interesting way to go about it. They moved their funds from the in-person event to the online discussions, and they created some truly amazing broadcast quality productions, very impressive, and it had a huge impact on their engagement as well as their following. They gathered a lot of new followers with these high-end quality video productions that they've been publishing and producing. And here's a couple of photos from some of the remote studios that I visited. The JPL NASA studio, this is just one of them. They also have a very impressive control room. The World Economic Forum, this is just one of the studios they had. And once again, they had an impressive control room that can stage their live events. And they really do rival the top level TV stations that you see in Australia and also around the world. I'm a big believer in media training, and I think it's really important to do some training if you want to improve your communication skills, but unfortunately not all scientists agree with me. So fortunately, I have some great reasons from the Alan Alda Centre for Science Communication. They believe that it's really important to develop goals and messaging before talking to an audience and actually determining who is your audience. If you're a scientist, are you speaking to other scientists and researchers? Are you talking to the general public? Are you talking to stakeholders, politicians, or maybe people that are going to fund your research? It's important to communicate clearly and then try to establish some trust and authenticity and hopefully some empathy with your audience. It's also important to present your work in an engaging and interesting way and try to create a connection with your audience. It's also vital to understand the knowledge gap. What a scientist knows about their research is very different from what the public might know about their research. And that's an important aspect of being a science communicator, is taking that high-end science and trying to translate it and present it in terms that the public will understand. And hopefully through science communication and the videos you produce, you'll inspire passion, enthusiasm, and some curiosity. When it comes to the editorial control of science videos, all the most successful organisations that I visited used a journalistic approach. That means they looked at what was the most important, the most interesting, or the most newsworthy for the general public. And places like the World Economic Forum, the audience is key for them, but because they have to produce the internal videos that maybe don't resonate with the general public, but also need to be done to promote the organisation or the different departments within the organisation, they used a really interesting technique. They published those videos on a second Twitter platform, not on the main Twitter platform, which is for the general public. And that's what a lot of the bigger organisations are doing. Instead of having one Facebook page, they'll have a couple, and the same with Twitter. So they'll be engaging different audiences on their different feeds. It's also really important to note the videos should be tailored for different purposes and platforms. What works on Facebook doesn't always work on Instagram. Facebook is mostly square and caption. Instagram works best in vertical. And what you produce for social media is very different for what you might produce for a website or an exhibition or for an awards ceremony where the video is going to be played up on a big screen. So there are ways to get around that. You can shoot one interview once and you cut a video a certain way, and then you can recut it or re-edit it for different platforms and purposes. But unfortunately, it's not one size fits all. And so it's really important to monitor the data analytics of what's actually working on the different platforms and where are you getting the best growth and engagement. And now to the future trends of social media. I think it's pretty obvious that social media is here to stay, and videos are one of the most powerful tools of getting your message across, and it's going to continue to be one of the main communication tools of people and organisations to connect with the public. The speed of short form video content is getting faster, TikTok will continue to grow and short form videos will continue to be trending on social media. Live streaming and online discussions will continue to grow. And long form video is most effective on YouTube, and more niche sites are popping up and more platforms will no doubt be developed. Now to my conclusions and recommendations. Social media platforms are constantly evolving, so digital trends need to be monitored if you want to continue to build engagement and audiences. Producing engaging content requires different approaches for different platforms, so video styles should be adapted. To maintain independence and integrity, it is helpful if the video team is funded internally by a reputable and credible scientific organisation. But if funds are received from outside sources, then the editorial independence should be still retained by the scientific organisation. In-house production teams are very versatile and they also reduce the overall costs per video, but it's critical to develop the right infrastructure. And I found that many video producers in the science space have extensive media and film backgrounds, and this is really important to developing and producing engaging science videos. Science videos should endeavour to engage the unengaged as well as the engaged. They should hopefully spark curiosity and answer questions, and they should always be fact-checked and reviewed and delivered by credible and trustworthy sources. Collaborating and cross-posting with other organisations can help audiences grow and increase content for publishing. And relevant and newsworthy content is the key to interesting science videos, and the goal should always be to increase reach, awareness and knowledge. So I hope you found some of that information interesting and helpful, and if you'd like any further information, please feel free to reach out to me on social media or contact the Churchill Trust. Thank you for watching.